I went all in, and that's a big mindset shift. It had to work. I had to go there every day. I didn't have, I had 2 part-time employees that were working the evenings for me. So I physically had to be there every single day to sell stuff. The financials showed, unless they were blatantly lying on all of their financials, it showed that there was going to be enough for us to live off of for a while I executed my plan to grow the business and increase profitability.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I've got today Tim Delaney. He is an entrepreneur and an investor, a property manager, and he went from volunteering in the Peace Corps, owning a thriving liquor store, which I want to talk to him about, 50 plus rental units in a commercial strip mall. He's a host of Business Buying for Financial Independence podcast and founder of The Power of Biz. Tim shares how buying a small business changed his life, what most people get wrong about entrepreneurship, and why boring, unsexy businesses are often the smartest path to freedom. Just from that introduction, you all can tell that Tim is my kind of guy because he speaks my language. Tim, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Jerry. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's just start off with the liquor store because I have looked at liquor stores half a dozen times at different moments in my life, and I never pulled the trigger, mostly back in Oregon. And I didn't do it simply because of the margins, which were told to me by the state. And so I really couldn't ever get comfortable with that. What was your experience owning that liquor store?
The margins aren't great. So you were probably right, especially if the state's controlling them. We have the flexibility to do what we want with the margins. However, because of the regulation, we know what all of our competitors can be paying for product. And so typically with typical markups, we have a rough idea of what other people might be selling product for and how low that they might be advertising for. And so you don't want to be that guy charging, 2, 3, 4 times as much as somebody else for the same product. So the margins are held pretty low. But I would be very fearful in a state that dictated the margins as well.
Yeah, pretty much just zeroed out across the board. Would you say, I owned gas stations, convenience stores, and car washes, and some of them were in nicer areas of town, and some of them were in not so nice areas of town. The ones that were in the higher areas of town, I could charge more for the gas as opposed to what I could charge, obviously, in the less nicer parts of town. Do you think that's the same for liquor stores?
It probably equates to some extent. I think there's certain products that might not matter, but for the most part, yes, if you're in a more price conscious area of a town, then they're going to be, nickel and diming you a little bit more, making sure that you don't raise the prices. But even in the nicer parts of town, those customers have more options to go different places too. They have freedom of mobility. So they will order, if they can save a substantial amount, they will drive a little bit further away or order online or do things like that. So
it brings up the thing I have always chastised people before, that they will pass a gas station that is 10 cents more to drive 10 miles out of the way to buy gas that's 10 cents less.
Yeah. I've never done that. I shouldn't say I've never done that. I think when I was a broke teenager with my first car, first job, I might have thought that way a little bit, but it wasn't going out of my way. It was, I know that there's a station up ahead on my route that is a little bit cheaper that I'll stop at. But yeah, the same thing with wine and liquor. We say that to people, we do occasionally get people in that say, I can get this $1 cheaper at the store, 25 minutes away. And, politely and nicely, we just say that's understandable. If you want to drive for 50 minutes in the car and burn that gas to save $1, by all means, go ahead.
I think that's the people who deal with money and people who don't. One of the things that I've noticed the most is that people who don't understand the value of their time.
100%.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, enough about liquor stores. I just wanted to get right to that because I was excited. I didn't know that about you, so I was excited to talk about that and ask you those couple of questions. Let's start off with you. Give us the 5-minute version.
Grew up middle class family. Parents owned a pizzeria. They sold it. My dad tried to start another business from scratch. It failed. And then he partnered up with somebody in building supplies and did that for the rest of his life. So I kind of saw the small business mindset from young, and I liked that freedom and flexibility that owning small businesses could provide. But I went to college to be a stockbroker because my grandmother had taught me about the stock market. I fell in love with it as a teenager, thought it was so cool. Some point in college, I realized that I didn't want to sit at a desk on Wall Street for 80 hours a week and trade stocks. So I decided to apply to the Peace Corps because at that point I didn't know what else to do. Joined the Peace Corps, loved it, stayed overseas, moved to Ethiopia after a 3-year stint in the Peace Corps to work for a development company, helping the Ethiopian economy develop, which was another great experience. I learned a lot about private sector development and how that impacts communities and, as GDP countries as a whole, how much impact business and the economic activity can really help people. Moved back to Buffalo, New York, where I was born and raised about 15-ish years ago now. And an opportunity to buy a small business fell in my lap. And that one did not work out, but it sent me down that path. I realized I was trying to start a couple of different things, trying to import handmade leather iPad sleeves from Ethiopia. Then the iPad changed dimensions on me, and that didn't work. And so this opportunity to buy a business fell in my lap, and I looked at the numbers and I looked at the bank financing available and all that. And I was like, this is an interesting opportunity. Instead of starting from scratch and putting money after money after money into building something and never knowing when I would feel comfortable taking a paycheck, I could just buy a business and write myself a paycheck the first week because that's what my business plan dictates that I can do. So that one didn't work out, but it set me down a path of looking at businesses. I analyzed dozens and dozens, eventually settled on the liquor store, and I bought that 12 years ago. Since then, I've added in real estate, added in some other business investments, and then most recently the podcast, as you mentioned.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. So we say this all the time. It's almost become cliche that people talk about sitting behind a desk and they want to go do more. But I always push back on that in this way. You give me your thoughts on this. Being an entrepreneur, it's as you just described it, right? Pretty straightforward from your perspective, from my perspective. You know how to do it. It's almost easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but because you have experience and you've done it. I think there's this misnomer in social media that if you are languishing behind a desk, the easy, quick, safe fix is to simply go out and be your own boss. I push back against that all the time. I don't think that most people are cut out to be their own bosses. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, when I talk about not wanting to sit at a desk, I mean, clearly I still ended up sitting at a desk for a lot of my time. And I think so on that front of the not sitting at a desk aspect, it's yes, you still might be sitting at a desk, but it's your desk. You're building your equity in your thing that you're doing, and you have the freedom to get up from that desk and do what you want when you want. It might mean the business might suffer, but you still have that choice. It's your choice. It's not your boss's choice or your boss's boss's choice or the CEO of a company that you've never met's choice. As for not everybody being cut out for it, I would agree to some extent. I think it is worth a lot of people. I think, yes, not everybody's cut out for it. Not everybody's going to do it. Not everybody can have the self-discipline to get up and do what they need to do every day. However, I think that there are a lot more people that could be doing it that don't give themselves the credit that for themselves, don't have the belief in themselves, but they could actually do it if they tried.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with that they should at least get out and try and they don't realize that even if they fail, they've succeeded in some ways because you look at the world completely different. You said something that I want to come back to, which is, and I agree with, I don't think this gets said enough, is that your business might suffer if you stand up from that desk or you don't follow your responsibilities, but you have the freedom to do it. And I think that's the part. Excuse me, I have a cold, so this one might be an interesting one to get through. That might be the part that gets missed in so many of these social media messages, which is that, yes, you have the freedom to get up, but I always say, I never got up because my competition was out there trying to steal my business. And I always looked at it as the competition was always stealing my business. And for me, that was not worth me getting up and not doing what I was supposed to do. And so you're correct that you can get up, but there is a cost that comes from getting up. When you have a boss, it's easy to sit there and do what you're supposed to because you have a boss for most humans. When you are, to your point, you have to have self-discipline. I think that is what gets lost. I think there's this idea that entrepreneurs are just flying around the south of France whenever they want to.
Yeah, social media has definitely skewed that the last few years with business owners, entrepreneurs, gurus just selling a lifestyle that doesn't necessarily equate to reality for most of us business owners. There's definitely a lot more work that goes into it than most of those people out there will be telling you up front. But there is, there's that trade-off. And if somebody's willing to make it, that, you know what, I'm going to take 2 weeks off every summer because I do want to go to the south of France and my business can afford it. And yeah, I might not make as much this year, but my business isn't going to go down the toilet because I took 2 weeks off. That's what I mean about the trade-off of if you're willing to do it. But on the other side, the longer you keep your head down, especially in the early days of going, the more stable, the bigger entity that you can build will allow you more time in the future if you so want it. And that's one of the reasons that I also really like buying an existing business too, is because you do have some of the staff, you do have some people and systems that are already in place that you can build on and improve on. So yes, you should still be there, especially at the beginning and for as long as you want to keep growing the business. But you do have a little bit more flexibility in that time capacity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've always said from the outside, if somebody brings me into their business, there's a chance, and I don't care if they're working on it full time, I'm going to bet a serious amount of money that I'm going to be able to increase their profit, decrease their expenses, probably 5 to 10%, just because when you're living in that hole all day long and you're fighting it, sometimes it's tough to get that look. And so when you come in from the outside and you buy it, you might see things on ways to improve sales, lower costs, right? Those sorts of things than the owners do. And you get to take advantage of that particularly if they've been long-term owners, the longer it gets, the less you pay attention to it, maybe on the corners, on the edges.
Yep. Yeah. I'd be willing to bet you could probably increase profit even more than you think, because it's, especially in small businesses, the owners get tired. They get, tired, I guess is the right word. And they don't watch things as closely. And I think we're all guilty of it. I bet there's areas, if I walked into your business or you walked into my business today,
1,000%.
we'd probably both save each other a lot of money.
Yeah, it's 1,000%. It keeps me up at night. That's 100% true. Yeah. And it's a weird kind of mentality, meaning as you just said, and I'm sitting here saying, I know it, but chasing it down for myself like I would for you, I don't know what it is. There's a disconnect there that is just tough to get over.
Yep. Yeah. I do some mentoring with a local entrepreneurial program, and it's the same kind of, I'll sit there for an hour and talk to the person and pick apart their business and show them all the places that they could be saving money or making more money. And to find the time and energy to do that to myself sometimes is not there. But I guess that's why even large corporations spend millions of dollars on external consultants every year too, because they come in and with no filters or with the blinders on and focus on that one area and show everybody what can be done properly. So it happens.
I'll never forget. The best month I ever had. I made $212,000. We were doing about $18 million a year, and I thought, man, that's it. I'm over the moon. And then it turns out a year and a half later, give or take, I figured out that I was costing myself about $60,000 a month. Yeah. But I was so excited with these giant numbers, right, that I didn't realize that the giant number could have been even bigger. Yeah. Right. I had this rare opportunity to really take advantage of it, but I was making more money than I'd ever seen in my life. Yeah. And I was like, man, I can do no wrong. Yeah. The reality was I was leaving another, 20% on the table. So yeah, I've lived that 100%. Let's go to the bigger pockets. You were on the podcast and you talked about the liquor store and how you put everything into it. Kind of a bet the farm on that deal kind of mentality is what I heard listening to it.
Yep.
A, would you portray it that way? And then B, tell us the story.
Yeah, it was kind of something like, so like I mentioned, I had tried to start this iPad sleeve importing company that in my mind was going to be a bigger leather importing empire over time. I was going to add more products and do more things. And some of it was on me. I'll blame Apple for changing the dimensions on the iPad, but it came down to it. It's my fault. I should have looked a little bit bigger. I should have paid attention to the changes coming. I should have marketed it differently. I could have done a lot of things differently, but that wasn't working out and I was burning cash. I was still part-time employed by my employer in Ethiopia. I was starting to do some small business consulting at the time because that idea of buying a business had fallen in my lap. So I started trying to teach older business owners how to use social media, but I wasn't making a lot on that. I was just trying to do it to meet and network with people that might want to sell their businesses. So we were burning cash month after month. My savings was dropping and the liquor store came up and I emptied out my accounts to make that down payment on the store. We were renting an apartment at the time. We had one car with a loan against it. We had a 1-year-old. She was probably about 8-9 months when I went under contract on the liquor store. We kind of knew something needed to change. I wasn't ready to go get a regular job in Buffalo that wasn't going to pay me what I felt I deserved, and I wanted that business of my own. So emptied the bank accounts, sold off the last of the stocks that we had, and put it all in on the liquor store, which was the best decision we made. And it's, do I recommend everybody and anybody to empty everything they own to go all in on a business? No, probably not. But because we were using SBA financing, I didn't own a home yet, so they had nothing to put, they couldn't put a lien against my home. So I didn't have to fear about that,
Right.
Yes, I could have got kicked out of my apartment, but it didn't matter, so we were all in, but also it wasn't like it wasn't like I was working a corporate career for 15 years and had, 401ks and large savings accounts saved up. It was about $35,000. So not insignificant, but not a massive sum either.
Right. And the key to that, what I want everybody to hear, I have preached this 1,000 times, which is you burnt the ships.
Yep.
You had nowhere to go.
Yep.
There was no turning back. You sold it all and you went all in. Now, the business that you looked at, the liquor store, it had value. You could see it. I'm sure it had a track record. It had a history of making money. Clearly, there was money left over for you to pay yourself after you paid your debt and all the expenses of the liquor store. Whatever you did with that liquor store, which we'll get into, then is that where your investment is really paying off. But the critical part here is that I don't know of an easy way. I know thousands of entrepreneurs. I know hundreds personally that I've worked with and talked with them about their businesses. I really don't know very many who have had real success. I mean, done really well for themselves. Not 100 millionaires, but just good ongoing operations over decades that didn't burn it all and risk it all, probably more than once, to get that business up and going. And so this idea that you can kind of half-ass your way into it, success-wise, long-term, I've not really seen that in any meaningful way.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And that's because that's exactly what I was doing with the importing thing. I was half-assing it. I didn't go all in on it. I didn't burn the bridges on that, or the boats, or whatever analogy we're using. And that's, ultimately that's why I'll blame myself. I will jokingly blame Apple for not consulting me on the dimensions of their iPad, but it was on me. And it was because I didn't go all in. With the liquor store, I went all in. And that's a big mindset shift. It had to work. I had to go there every day. I didn't have I had 2 part-time employees that were working the evenings for me. So I physically had to be there every single day to sell stuff. The financials showed, unless they were blatantly lying on all of their financials, it showed that there was going to be enough for us to live off of for a while I executed my plan to grow the business and increase profitability.
Let's go back one sec real quick to the iPad covers. Early on, as I was making a couple of dollars and started to kind of look at other things outside of the transportation business I had started, I got involved with a group of guys that were going to make, this will date me, CD holders that went into your visor in your car.
Yep.
Right?
I had those.
And you had those? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we got them in Walmart and all kinds of stuff. So we really hit it pretty well for about a week. And then China showed up. Yep.
They do
and
that.
It doesn't matter that we had the patents. It doesn't matter any of that. It matters that all of a sudden Walmart could sell them for half as much and make twice as much. And we were out of business. Did you worry about that, or did you even think about that?
Yeah, to some extent I thought about it. My differentiator was that these were going to be handmade. They were real leather, 100% genuine cowhide on the outside, goat suede on the interior, and all handmade, and at a very reasonable price. And, in retrospect, going back and thinking about my pricing models, it probably wouldn't have been sustainable to, I would have never sold in Walmart. It was not a mass produced product. The margins would have gotten me, made me a okay living. It wouldn't have crushed it, but that's where in my mind I had thought about expanding into other products as it grew. It was so yeah, some of those thoughts crossed my mind. Some of them I probably didn't think through entirely. But I wasn't worried about China. They were, there were already cheap iPad sleeves on the market. My thing was quality, handmade. And that was one of the other aspects of the second version of the iPad that killed me was Apple released the smart cover. So now they had a cover that they were selling with the product that changed the dynamics of needing a sleeve in the first place. On that first version, there was no protection for it whatsoever. So people were buying it, didn't know what to do with it. Sleeves were starting to be made. But then that's when Apple came out with their own version of a cover too. So it didn't, there were multiple reasons that business didn't work out, but they're all on me.
As an entrepreneur, and this is a good ad, I suppose, Matt, who does all my editing, my producer, this podcast right here with Tim and I having this conversation about entrepreneurship and his experience. Every entrepreneur or want to be entrepreneur should listen to this podcast because these are real world examples, real world stories by entrepreneurs who have been through the wars and can give you insight into what it takes to make this entrepreneurial dream that people have a reality. But it's not easy, and it does not come without its serious hiccups. And here, just in the last 15 minutes, we told 3 or 4 stories about 3 or 4 separate businesses and the reasons why they didn't work. And I think that as an entrepreneur or wannabe, this sort of information, I wish I had this when I started at 28.
Yeah. It's definitely easier to find now with internet. There's a lot more of the social media is the positives and the fake positives and the wannabe reality, but we are seeing more. And I think you're right. This is probably going to be one of the key conversations that a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs should be listening to, because we're both being pretty vulnerable with our losses here, and that's what more people do need to hear.
Yes.
Nobody writes a book about all of their losses or all of their failures. It's always the wins, I guess.
Right. Yes. The sexy part, I posted the other day that I think that 95% of the information I see relative to entrepreneurship on the internet is wrong. And I disagree with it. Now, I made that number up, but a large majority of it, I could not disagree with it more. In fact, just based on my experience, it's been 180 degrees the opposite. It's like written by people who read a book.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. There's very few people out there that are sharing the real the real stories, the hiccups, the headaches, the problems, which is where we learn the most as entrepreneurs and as business owners as well. Like that's, I'm glad when I make a mistake because I get to learn something new from it.
Yeah.
I'm not glad, I shouldn't say that, but I'm okay with it. I
Right.
accept it because it's a learning opportunity and I enjoy learning.
And mistakes are inherent in the business, particularly the bigger you get. The bigger you get, the easier it is to make big mistakes. It might be small when you're small and you don't notice it as much, but the bigger you get, man, that mistake can just get bigger and bigger. Let's talk about, so did you consciously start or buy the liquor store as an existing business? Were you looking for an existing business or did it fall into your lap? Did you, as opposed to starting a business from scratch, I want to make sure I understand, you did that on purpose or just kind of fell in your lap?
I did that on purpose. So I had another business had fallen into my lap that did not work out. Started going down that road of buying it, but the bank did not like the numbers. I couldn't find financing. So that didn't work out, but it opened my eyes to the opportunity that was out there with buying existing businesses. And this is, even this was 12, 13, 14 years ago, there were people talking about the silver tsunami of baby boomers retiring and selling their businesses. And there was going to be tons of opportunity out there. And I spent the next year and a half analyzing dozens of businesses. Cause then I was on those iPad sleeves were not working out. I wasn't ready to go all in on starting something from scratch, but I realized that I could go all in if I found the right business to buy. And so that liquor store was in a market of the Buffalo suburbs that I knew because a friend from high school's parents, who was an anesthesiologist, had moved out to that suburb and built a really beautiful, nice house. And I knew that town was changing from agricultural to nicer homes. And there's also a factory down the street that builds, it's still there and still growing. They build parts for missiles and spaceships and rockets and all of the things that the government will continue to buy no matter what the economy says and no matter whether we're shut down or not shut down. And that factory was also changing from blue collar assembly line workers to high-tech engineers running high-tech machinery that was building these parts now. And so the liquor store had been there for 50 years. It was being run by a great couple. They had owned it for about 20 of those years at that point, and they were tired. They were done. They didn't cater to the changing demographics of the town. Their most expensive bottle of wine was like $15-20. Their biggest seller was a $11 1.75 liter of vodka. And they were fine. They made good money on it. But I saw the opportunity to change the product mix, not eliminate those things, but just evolve it, change it, add in new stuff, and really cater to some of the new people.
So when you bought it, and again, then that was your kind of your payoff on the investment. Once you bought the business, did you buy it SBA, I think you said, or did you do seller financing? How'd you do it?
Both. We did. So I put about 10% down. The sellers financed a little over 10%, 10-15%. And then the bank came in with, the sellers did 10 and the bank did 85. So I ended up with a little extra for working capital from day one, which was great. 7A program with the SBA, which is also, super helpful as a first-time business buyer, because you have multiple sets of eyes analyzing it. Like I said, that first business that fell in my lap, it didn't go through because I couldn't get the financing, because the bankers and the SBA said, no, there's not enough cash flow here. It's not sustainable enough. We don't like it. And I fought them on it at first, but then I realized, well, if these guys that analyze dozens of businesses a week tell me it's not good, then it's probably not good.
Right.
With the liquor store, everybody was gung ho. They were the SBA, the banks. They said, "Yep, this is perfect." Sellers are willing to finance a little bit of it. That means that they're confident that what they're telling you is correct, and they're confident they'll get paid. So it was a win-win for everybody. That's what I really. I encourage people to look at, the bank, just a bank in general, whether or not the bank uses the SBA to back them up or not is their choice, but having the banker's eyes on it. And then if you can get that seller to hold just a small piece of the note, at least, so that it shows that they're confident that the business is going to continue.
Did the seller, did he have to defer on the note to the bank and the SBA for his 10%?
No, I was able to make both payments at the same time. So they got
Okay.
they got their payments at the same time. That I don't know if that's changed since then, or if that's a deal by deal situation for the SBA. I do know there was language in there. If I stopped paying the SBA, I would have had to stop paying them as well. So they were protected that way. But
Right.
I was able to make both payments at the same time.
So to anybody listening that doesn't understand, and you want to buy into a business, particularly in an existing business, he went out and got an SBA loan, which just means that well, you explained it, Tim. Getting an SBA loan? Give the listeners a background who, real briefly, that don't understand what we're talking about, because I'm sure a lot of this is just Chinese.
Yep. So I'll start with the SBA is the Small Business Administration. That's the U.S. federal government agency that helps support small businesses. And they have loan programs, and it's a little bit misleading, especially for the 7A program, which is what we use to buy an existing business. They don't actually make the loan. What they do is when whatever bank you go to for the loan is issuing you the loan, they will follow the SBA guidelines. And sometimes they'll bring in an officer from the SBA, but some of the banks will do it internally, is essentially vet you and the deal to meet certain SBA criteria. And if it meets that criteria, the SBA will guarantee a percentage of that loan for the bank. So the bank is making the loan, but if I default on it, the SBA will step in and give the bank some of their money back, and then the SBA will come after me personally to collect on that debt. So it gives the banks more confidence to lend to entrepreneurs and to people that want to buy businesses, because it's always a risk. I like to say, if you're analyzing it well and it's an existing profitable business, the risk is much lower, but it is still a risk. So the banks are scared, especially for somebody like me that had never run a business before. So they don't know for sure that I'm going to be able to take it, even though it's profitable, and continue to run it profitably. So the SBA, so that's the 7A loan. It just helps, it backs up the bank so that they can confidently lend to an entrepreneur.
And typically it's something along the lines of 55-45, 60-40, that the SBA is on the hook. So the bank is not off the hook. They have in the amount loaned, they're on the hook for, say, 40%. So it lessens their exposure. They still get full value on the deal, the interest rate, all of those things. But they're protected by the federal government. Like I said, the government takes on the majority of it, and then the bank backs up the difference. 7A, then you had to go because you had no collateral, obviously, so you couldn't collateralize the loan. There's other loans for that if you had a house or a building or some sort of something to collateralize it that way. But it's a great way to get in there. And then the seller financing, they threw in a little bit too, which they love to see. Both the bank and the SBA likes to see that the seller's got that.
Yeah, and as a buyer,
confidence in the business.
Yeah, as a buyer, I like that confidence as well, because it shows that they, I talked to a couple of guys recently that are trying to sell their business, and when I mentioned seller financing, the nose that came out of their mouth so fast, it just made me question what's going on. Why they've had this business for 60 years and they don't have confidence that it will keep going. And it's not, everybody has a reason for wanting their money or not wanting to do seller financing, but
I'm going to come back to the internet and say that a lot of that, because that has been my experience also, and a lot of that, again, even with experienced small business owners, and small be 500 to say a couple of $1 million a year, they just don't have the experience, and so they've watched social media and they see these big deals where Apple pays $1 billion for X, and it's an all cash deal. And I think that there's this idea that the rarefied world of that kind of business versus the majority of the 30 odd million small businesses could not be further apart.
Yeah, it's probably true. As they see and hear about these deals more frequently than you hear about other small business deals going on.
Yeah, you never
Or
hear about those. Good
yeah,
point.
or you
Yeah.
don't even know. I heard somebody refer to it the other day as the country club number. So the buddies at the country club come in and say, I sold my business for X amount of dollars, but they don't share the terms of that deal. They don't
Yes,
say whether or not they financed
that's
100%
right.
of it, or whether it's a payout over the next 30 years, or most of that's an earnout, not not an upfront price. So they called it the country club number, of just the guys bragging about what they're getting for their business, but not disclosing the terms, which are just as important as the price.
When I feel like trolling on the internet, which is far too often, and I need to control myself. One of the things that I do when I see, particularly online digital ads or stores and things of that nature, people are pimping some sort of program they want to sell you because their store's done so well, and they'll talk about how it did, $250,000 last. I made $250,000 last month, and they always say it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how much money did you actually, was that profit? Was that gross or was that net? What'd you do there? What was the dollar bills? And quickly they disappear because they always use that. I mean, I always say for myself, just to show the experience, right? I mean, I've done hundreds of millions of dollars, but I've not made hundreds of millions of dollars. I've done hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, right? But I've not made hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. And I think that terminology, and even to your point, is 100% accurate. It just muddies the waters on what actually took place in that deal.
Yeah. And that's, it boils my skin when I see these guys on the internet talking about how much they made. And it's like, well, you didn't make that. It passed through your bank account, but
Yes,
you didn't make it. It's
right. How much was left at the end? Okay, so you buy the business, and I want to get to this part because this is kind of the payoff.
Yes.
You buy the business. The numbers are good. You used SBA financing. This is all step-by-step programs that anybody listening to this can follow along. You get a bank. All banks work with SBA financing for the most part. You find a business that cash flows, and you don't have to have experience necessarily in the business. That's what the SBA is for, to offset that risk. Now you buy the business, and this really is the point, is what can you do to the business, which we talked about earlier. Put me in your business, I'll save 10 points. You put you in my business, you'll save me 10 points. You're banking on that to help fund the thing, because you're probably not making much money with the day you bought it and you took over and you started running it.
Yeah. So I knew I wouldn't be making a killing. I knew I would still be, I'd be barely getting by, but I knew there was enough to at least cover my basic living expenses, which was what I needed to start. And then I had a plan. Like I mentioned, the product mix was tired. It needed a refresh. We could bring in some new products, bring in some new people. There was no website. There was no social media. There was the owners, great people, but they would sit in the back room and smoke cigarettes and drink samples with the sales reps. So the whole place smelled like smoke. And there's a lot of people nowadays that don't like to walk into a place and smell cigarette smoke. So,
that's some old school stuff right there.
Yep. So just that alone,
I want to buy it just on that description. I want to buy it.
Yep.
Right.
That's like, if I had just done that one thing of not smoked in the store, I would have increased sales.
Sure.
But then I introduced a point of sale system. So they were using the old fashioned cash register where you typed in $9.99 wine, $10.99 liquor, and it printed up that little receipt with no names of anything on it. And they had no idea how many bottles of Jack or how many bottles of different wine they had in the store on any given day. So from day one, I put in a point of sale system, cloud-based, iPad-based, that
inventory was all based on what they saw.
Yep. So we counted everything the night before we closed on the deal. We counted everything in the store, every single bottle. I spent half the night putting all those numbers into my point of sale, so that from the first sale in my name, we had every bottle tracked going.
What was hold that thought 1 second. What was the discount? This is another important point. I just had this conversation last week, so I want to bring this up. What was the discount you got on the inventory?
I paid their full cost on inventory.
Okay, and that's because in an alcohol, because I've never heard of that before. So in an alcohol business, that just is what they paid for it is what it's worth, and it still has that value. You buy a convenience store, you're getting a discount because some of the candy bars are old.
Yeah, I could have pushed back. We could have gone through items more carefully and said, well, these wines have been sitting here. With hard liquor, there's really no shelf life.
Yeah, right.
It'll last.
Good point.
But with wine, yeah, I could have pushed back on some of the product. There wasn't enough of that, and there was no easy way to look at their buying history of the products to determine a date of saying like, okay, everything you've had for more than 6 months, we're going to discount by this. And everything you've had for more than 2 years, we're going to discount by this. If they had a better ordering system electronically, maybe I would have asked for that. But we were talking, originally when I put the store under contract, we were talking $150,000 of inventory. And when we counted the inventory, we were closer to 100. I think we were at 110. So that's what I was buying. It wasn't worth it to me at that time to spend hours or possibly days of delay trying to knock a few $1,000s off of the purchase price. And that's, whether or not I could have, yes. And you're right. In some businesses, you absolutely should be looking at the age of the inventory and how long it's been sitting there and how much of it's damaged and ask for a discount, whether it's just a general percentage off or whether you go through in detail. They were also a little bit frustrated because they didn't realize until closer to closing that they were paying the broker percent on the inventory as well. So they were already getting less for the inventory than they felt they needed or that they felt they brokers should.
Yes.
So, when they set it up with the broker, there was I was paying $200,000 for the liquor store plus inventory. So whatever, we figured it was around 150, but it was 110. So I paid 310 for the business, and with the inventory, and that's what they had to pay the broker commission on. They thought they were only paying commission on the 200. So they were already a little bit miffed. And if I pushed and made a big deal, it could have blown up the deal for them. So,
and that's the vagaries of a business. And as businesses close, the closer you get to closing time, that's when the knives really come out. And that's when everybody really starts to understand what's coming. You think, well, just pay attention to that 3 months earlier. Let me tell you, people, as someone who has done this a dozen times, I'm telling you, that is not how it works. No matter how hard you try, one side or the other is going to bring something up at the last minute and delay the thing for weeks or months.
Yep. Yeah. And with the SBA, there's one of the downsides of the SBA is it takes longer to get the deal done financing wise. And it had already been much longer than they wanted to be still in it. And
it always is.
It just wasn't worth it. I bought inventory from a store that went out of business a couple of years after I bought my store. And I did that because the bank owned inventory. I put a bid in for it and I went through because that store owner had a detailed record of when he bought everything. I just used some formulas in Excel and discounted different items by how much I thought they should be discounted based on how long they'd been sitting there, and was able to get things for pennies on the dollar because they were too old. Some of it was just unsellable, so it was zero. But
right, smart. Yeah. Well, I wanted to stop you there and kind of walk through that because that's a big part of when you're buying inventory, and obviously that is listed separately on the deal. The banks look at that differently than they look at say goodwill, i.e. the value of the business. So you did that day one, everything in the books, which is smart. You got the iPad set up. You're doing everything electronically. You open the doors. Now, how do you start the chase for the profit? What was the plan aside from the point of sale systems and the tracking?
So this is one of the things where having a good relationship with the seller pays off too. They let me start coming in a month or two before we closed on the deal. So I was in the store a lot. They were teaching me, and I was putting all the products into the point of sales. And I set up a website. I set up social media. Had it ready to go for day one. So I started blasting Facebook, email messages to my network from the first day. Facebook marketing was huge for me. I was paying 1 cent per impression back then on Facebook ads. So I was running ads constantly with new products, to very specific demographics in the town, showing, my new selection of 40, 50, $60 bottles of wine to households in my zip code and the surrounding zip codes with household income over $150,000 or 200. I don't remember the specifics, but I was able to get very granular with Facebook ads from at that time. They've since changed a lot of their targeting stuff, but it allowed me to run those ads from day one, very inexpensively. We worked on customer service. It was me most of the time, but I had 2 part-time employees. I talked to them about the importance of how I wanted customers treated, how I wanted them talked to, how I wanted them to write down anything a customer asked for. So we're a small store. Our square footage is limited. We try to cover our bases on types of products, but if somebody came in looking for X, Y, or Z, we would write it down immediately. We'd take down their phone number. I'd call them within a day and say, here's the price it's going to be if you just want a bottle. Here's the price it's going to be if you want to buy a case. And here's the price it's going to be if I put it on my shelf every day from here till whenever you stop buying it. And that alone really got us a lot of customers and a lot of regular customers because people started talking. They're like, oh, I don't have to drive 20 minutes away anymore. This new owner there will get whatever bottle of wine that I buy every week and keep it at his store for me.
Yeah, so, smart.
Those were
how long before you really start to see sauce? Let me try again. Here we go. How long, Tim, before you start to see some real meaningful results doing all of that?
So we closed mid-May. By the end of the year, I was seeing sales surpassing what they had done in the entire previous year.
Wow.
And it was tough to say it. I didn't have month to month comparisons for their sales for the previous year.
Right.
And it is a slightly seasonal business where it really ramps up in November and December. But I could tell from talking to my 2 part-time employees and the previous owners would come in from time to time, and everybody noticed a significant increase in the daily traffic, the amount of customers that were coming in every day just by the end of that first year.
What percentage, you beat me to one of those halfway to the question I had here, just as an aside, what percentage of your sales is November and December?
Oh, that's a good question. I should know that. I want to say it's about 20%, 25%.
Wow.
So it's substantial. It's not, it's not like 50% or,
right.
It's not the majority,
but it's not like for so many retailers where, they make all their money in those 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, we go, when January compared to December always feels very slow, but it is still a very good month for us. People for the most part don't stop drinking for most of the year. So it's pretty steady throughout the year. We see a bump around Easter. We see a bump around, in the summer months, usually, as long as the weather's decent. And then big pickup from Thanksgiving to Christmas. New Year's Eve isn't as big as people think it is, but it's, the Thanksgiving Eve and Christmas Eve are our 2 busiest days. It's a very last minute business.
Yeah, people buy gifts and things of that nature, I'm assuming.
Yep.
You don't have anything, so you're buying a bottle of wine or something.
Gifts and wine for dinner. That's
right.
That's the thing.
So the business now, got a couple more questions here for you.
Yeah.
The business now, you are running with somebody, or are you in there still every day?
I have a very good manager that is in there every day. He runs the day-to-day. I still control payables and payroll. I'm there 2 to 3 days a week. I consult with him on any high-level decisions, but he is managing things day to day, and he's gets an incentive package to keep things good.
How often do you talk to him?
If not every day, at least every other day. But most days it's at least a couple texts go back and forth every day.
Right. And how long did it take you to find him and then train him?
He has been with me 8 years. He came in as a 1 day a week part-time employee to supplement his other full-time job. And he switched over to full-time assistant manager after about a year of that. And then after a couple of years being the assistant manager, he wanted more responsibility, more pay. I wanted a little bit more freedom, and he took over as GM.
And so I think you said you bought it 11 or 12 years ago. Is that
About
right?
12 years ago. Yep.
So you ran it for 4 years on your own.
It was about 4 or 5 years. So let's see, 2013 to 2000. I'd say 2021 is when I really stepped back from day to day.
Quite a while.
So yes.
And in doing, you were able to do that because you had grown the business sufficiently. You were willing to pay out some of that profit to get yourself some time.
Exactly. And utilize, and it's not a situation of I wanted more time to go sit on the beach and do nothing. I wanted time because I know the time value. My time is valuable, and I could use my time to build and buy other things as well.
To make more money than what you pay him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. But the key here is that you didn't buy it and go do that. It took you 5, 6, 7 years to get the business to the point that you were able to do that.
Yes. And I worked side by side with him, training him. He was an assistant manager from at least 2018 to 2021.
Yeah.
I was slowly handing things over to him. He was writing the standard operating procedures as I gave him something new to do. I had, things documented to an extent, but what I would do is every time I taught him a new thing, like ordering inventory or how to hire somebody, I would have him write down the step-by-step process in a Google document that then we would review and make sure that it was how we want it so that he could refer back to it the next time he needed to do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's the way to do it. I want that message heard though, that you bought it and went to work for a long time every day to build it to where you now, because people see that now, well, he doesn't even have to work in the business, and look at that's passive income, Tim. You're making the classic passive. I always get smart mouthed about this. I don't know why I do that. I have an issue with it. Right. The term passive income is such a joke and it's so overused. Would you describe, Tim, what you do with the business today as passive income?
Nope, it's not. There's no such thing as passive income, Jerry.
Thank you.
That's the anybody that tells you something is passive is a liar. Even to the investing in stock, like the stock market. If you have enough money where you think you can just put it all in the stock market and live off of it, it's still not passive. You still need to monitor things. You still need to make decisions once in a while. What are you going to invest in? Or there's a lot of people in the real estate syndication world that just make passive passive investments. Sure, they might not need to do anything for the 3 to 7, 8 years that they're in that investment, but they still have to do a lot of vetting up front to make sure they're putting the money in the right spot. That's not easy work. I
know a lot of people in the market that wishes they would have checked their stocks yesterday instead of today.
Yeah. So that's, that misnomer of passive doesn't exist. At some point you're doing something, now that the intensity of what you're doing can change. So it can be more passive or less passive, but it's not passive.
So I love every part of this story, from your start to where you are, where you hired the manager. The business is growing and it's making money, and you're able to do those things and start to branch out. And this is where I say to anyone who will listen as an entrepreneur, the moment you can buy your own building, buy it. Yep. So work as hard as you can as an entrepreneur operating in a company with the intent that what you're working towards is buying the building that you're in.
Yep.
Rent from yourself. Yep. And so in this scenario, looks like you've expanded out into real estate and you bought the strip mall that your store sits in. Did I read that right?
You got that correct.
Oh, I love that store. I love this.
So in early 2013, while the deal was under contract, I had to go. The landlord, previous owner of the building, and the store owners were both very old school, very handshake type of people. There was no lease in place for the liquor store to be in the plaza.
Wow.
But it was fine. It had been there forever. But the bank doesn't like to lend money to a business that doesn't have a lease to be in a place that, and again, that's one of those nice things about having a bank at your back, because they make you do things that you have an excuse for going to do it. You go into the landlord's office and say, I'd be comfortable with you, John, as a handshake kind of person, but the bank we have to have something in writing for the bank.
Right.
So you have somebody to blame and hold you accountable as well. But during that conversation about the lease with John, I said, any interest in selling the business in the building? And he said, absolutely not. I will die before I sell the building, because he had built it all in the 70s. He was worried about capital gains.
I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten that answer.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for the next, so that was 2013. For the next 5 years, every once in a while, at least once or twice a year, I would ask John if he was ready to sell the building and get the same answer. And it was fine. And then in the middle of 2018, he was repaving a big section of the parking lot. And he was kind of complaining to me how much it was costing him and how much of a pain it was and how expensive everything was. And I said, and you're still not ready to sell this place, John? And he said, you know what? I'm ready to sell. He's like, he said, I talked to my son, who's an accountant. He told me that if I sell or finance it, I won't have to pay the capital gains that I thought I would have to pay. Yeah. So I'll hold the note for 90%. You just got to come up with 10% down.
Now, so tell me, when he said what his accountant, not people who don't understand what we're talking about here.
Yep.
If you had a lottery ticket and what you want, the number on that lottery ticket is, I will sell or finance the real estate, you just won the lottery.
Yep.
That's the greatest thing you can ever hear. Give me some sense when he said that. You had to have immediately reacted in your head and gone, oh my God.
Yep. It was pretty much, I said, done. He had a price tag. It was $1 million even. And he was willing to do 90% financing at I think he wanted 6%. This was mid 2018.
Okay.
I knew I wasn't going to budge on the price. That number, those 7 digits, is a meaningful number for a lot of people. It had, I knew that trying to negotiate down $10, $20, $50,000 probably wasn't going to be in my, worth my time and energy, but I saw some room on the interest rate. So we got the interest rate down to 4% instead of 6%, which reduced my monthly payments. And then I had to go
significantly on $1 million.
Yep. Very, very,
What's the time frame?
He wanted to close. He wanted to be done as soon as possible. So the note was a 5-year balloon with a 20-year amortization. And then I needed to come up with the other 10% down, which I also didn't have sitting in my bank account. So I went to a private lender and borrowed that as well. So
you said a couple of things there. We're going to run out of time, but I want to make sure we get through a couple of these things, because this is how deals get done all of the time.
Yep.
Let's go with the private lender. You're talking hard money. You went to somebody who was willing to give you money kind of as a deal on the side, not a bank or not some financial institution.
Yep. This was a family member that I knew had retirement money that was willing to do it on a long-term basis. So it was not true hard money. It was a 5% rate over 20 years. So just a monthly payment for for the 20-year period.
Right.
And then his note was the 5-year balloon, which we did redo last year, 2 years ago, and pushed it out a little bit longer. And I'm about to refinance now into a bank loan to take.
So he wants to get paid out now?
He passed away last year, unfortunately.
Oh,
which
okay. So
was
the family's
part of his plan. He was in his 90s.
Okay.
And that was part of him realizing that he would never have to pay the capital gains. So his family inherits that mortgage now at the stepped up basis. So they will not pay any capital gains on it when I pay them out on the principal.
Right. Stepped up basis being the value of it where they inherited versus the value of it when he bought it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's going back to the couple things you wanted to touch on. I don't know if one of them was, since he built this thing all from scratch in the 70s, it had fully depreciated. So his basis was $0. So if he sold it for $1 million cash, he would have owned capital gains on the $1 million, which was a substantial sum of money that he didn't want to hand to the
Yeah,
government.
30 odd percent, 20 odd percent. Yeah. And then the other part of that was you bought it on a 5-year balloon, which ostensibly means at the end of the balloon, there has to be a new negotiation, a refinancing, or a buyout.
Yep.
And you did that on a 20-year AM, which means that the monthly payment you were making on the $1 million was based on 20 years.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so everybody understand, I want everybody to understand,
Yep.
this is how these deals get done all the time. This was a perfect example because you can find these deals if you work at it all of the time, but understanding all of this jargon and this lingo helps you get down the road towards buying your own business, because this is how deals get done. It is not what you read in Fortune and Forbes magazine. That is not how us normies conduct business.
And to that jargon piece, it was podcasts. So in early 2018, I had decided that I wanted to get into real estate, and I'd started listening to real estate podcasts. And so by the middle of 2018, I was no expert by any means, but I had heard enough of these terms thrown around that when he said seller financing, I didn't sit there and scratch my head and say, what does that mean? And have to have him explain it to me, which might have ruined his confidence in me as a buyer. So, if you're listening to this podcast, which you probably are, I guess, listen to more like this, that you can learn these terms and the lingo to understand what you're talking about. You don't have to be an expert, but just the more you hear it, the better you will be when you get into that situation.
Yeah, and not only, and this is where a broker, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm anti-broker. I have a great real estate broker for my development deals, but I'm business brokers. That's another story. We don't have time. But the importance of being informed, and not just informed to the point where you knew what that term seller financing means, but also understanding that these deals, how they can get done, and that when you're in a negotiation to buy a business, understanding something that the person on the other side may not, is the difference between getting the deal done or not. In your case, he said, I don't want to have to pay those taxes. Well, your response could have been, I suppose, in 2013 or whenever he first hit you with that, could have been, well, you don't have to, we can do it this way. Had you had the knowledge 6-7 years earlier.
100%. If I had known then what I knew in 2018, I might have gotten that building much sooner.
Right. So it's not just understanding the jargon, it's understanding what it means. And really, there's not a lot of pieces to it. It's not difficult, right? It's easy to say, I've got all this experience, you have all this experience, but really there's 4 or 5 real points that you just need to address at the conversation point, at the negotiation point at the beginning, to make a deal happen. And understanding what your options are to try to help facilitate that deal is the difference between getting it done and not getting it done. So if somebody's listening here, as we go out the door, we've kind of covered everything. So my last question is, give the folks some sort of recommendation to buy their first business. I think that this is about as comprehensive a podcast on how to buy a business for the normies that I can imagine. But even given that, and your experience here over since 2013, then the last 10, 12 years, what do you want the folks to know that are looking to buy their first business? Experience-wise, how you got into it, some of the headaches that you had. What's the thing you want to tell the folks?
I'd say there's a couple things. First of all, if you are running a department in your day-to-day job, if you have employees reporting to you already, if you run your household, finances and kids and schedules, you probably have some capability to run a business. Like we talked about at the beginning, it is not for everybody, but more people than you would think can do it. So have some faith in yourself. If it interests you at all, get around other people that are doing it. Get out there, listen to more podcasts like this, connect with people at conferences, and kind of learn the ins and outs and talk to more people that have done it. There's a lot of people out there that have bought existing businesses that are happy to share their experience. And then, in terms of actually identifying a business, take a look at your credit card statements and look at the independent businesses that you spend the most money at. and go talk to
Good.
those owners and just
Yeah.
say, I'm interested in owning my own business one day. What can you tell me? What,
Right.
do you know anybody that's looking to sell? Those types of things can really can kind of help get your thought process started on it.
Business owners love talking about their businesses. I say this all the
Yep.
time. There was a post the other day on Threads that I pushed back on that said that, if you're not willing to pay for your community as an entrepreneur, then you're not invested in the business or some garbage like that. And I was like, y'all don't know what you're talking about. When you're a brand new startup or you're thinking about being a startup, you don't have money to pay for any of that stuff. But there's a ton of business owners out there like me, like you. I love talking about my business. I love talking about business.
Yep.
And so I will give my time if I can incentivize somebody to go out and buy a business, and I'll explain to them all the pitfalls, all the things I did well, and all the things I didn't do so well.
Yep. Yeah. I think I know business owners that will hide from customers because they don't have the time to talk to the customers, but they will gladly talk for hours to somebody that's interested in the nuts and bolts of the business.
You are so right. That's funny you say that. That's so true.
That's it's just the nature of it. But yeah, I think, and then get around other people. I think you have the Kronos Group, and there's, get around people that are like-minded, that think like you, that you want to be like. That's the best way to really learn more.
All right, folks. Well, you can tell that Tim's story is proof that you don't need some huge head start or some flashy tech startup to build some serious wealth. Stop reading all that garbage in the internet to understand how real world works. Again, I'll use this term for about the 10th time for us normies, because this is how business is done. You got to have the courage and the discipline and the willingness to go to work and roll up your sleeves. You just heard Tim talk about that. My own story is the same way. I went 4 years without getting paid, and I was running an $8 million company, but I wasn't making enough money to pay myself. So, we've all been there. And so if you got value from this episode, I want you guys to make sure you check out Tim's podcast, Business Buying for Financial Independence, and then go and follow his work at Power of Biz. That's Power of B-I-Z, powerofbiz.com. Tim, how else can the folks get a hold of you here as we go out?
Those are the best ways to get a hold of me, but you can also find me on Instagram and Threads at Tim T. Delaney. I share clips of my podcast and other insightful or controversial takes on business, just to get people upset sometimes. So that's
but
yeah.
To that end, I almost forgot. We're going to go one more minute if you don't mind, Tim.
I've got plenty of time.
You made a comment. I don't remember where I saw it, but I made a note. So tell me if this comment is correct, that you're making money in businesses that aren't flashy, that aren't pretty, that you're not necessarily passionate about, that aren't your love of your life, or those sorts of things. Is that right? Did I read that correctly somewhere?
Yeah, to some extent. It's not that they're definitely not pretty. And it's not that I don't have I don't have a true passion for wine and liquor. It's not like my life's work is wine and liquor, but I make money from it. And I think that anybody can do that without being extremely passionate about it. It's as long as you understand it and you're willing to understand it, you're willing to learn about it and what makes it tick as an industry, then I think you can do it. And definitely not flashy or sexy or anything like that. It's an old liquor store. It's been there for 60 years.
I swear that we were separated at birth, because I say all of the time, the outro here to my podcast is opportunities are everywhere. You got to go get them. And if you're so concentrated on, I want to be a florist because I love flowers and it's my life's passion, then your head is down and you're not paying attention to opportunities that go by in front of you that you could take advantage of to make enough money to profitably sell those, that you're good enough to sell those things profitably, and then take all that money and go work on the things that you're passionate about. I work passionately, so do you, on your businesses, but I want to make a living playing pool. I can't do that. Right? So I have to have all these other businesses. Every dollar I ever made in real estate, I don't love. Right? And now I love real estate, but I don't love it. It's not my passion. But it is a means to an end in a way that I can make money than to go follow those things that I really want to do.
Yeah. I agree completely with that. I have a friend who she's done very well in the midterm rental space. And then she started doing these travel masterminds because she wanted to go to Patagonia and climb Mount Kilimanjaro and go to Antarctica and awesome stuff. And she turned it into a business trip for herself because she's leading groups of other aspiring real estate entrepreneurs and business owners. And then she stopped because her accountant, and she realized herself, she wanted to go enjoy it. She was passionate about going to those places. She wanted to go enjoy them, not do it for work. And she made, she just shifted gears and started making more money on the things she was good at, so that she could just go enjoy those things instead of having to turn them into work trips.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm a business nerd. I love everything there is about business. As far as I'm concerned, this was a perfect podcast. So we better get some good numbers out of this thing, damn it, because this thing was money. And anybody looking to be a entrepreneur needs to listen to this thing.
Thanks, Jerry. I would agree completely. I will be sharing this out as soon as it's released. So keep me posted. I really appreciate you having me. I love the conversation. I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Let's do it, Tim. And as I say, for everybody, like I said, opportunities are everywhere. You got to keep your head up looking for them, and you got to go get them. Appreciate you listening. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.